Welcome to the Daily Edge. Very excited about this particular episode because it's not the normal Noodleberg crew. We've got KLS here with us today, who I had the wonderful opportunity of meeting through LinkedIn because it's the very best place to meet people and connect with like-minded individuals. Got the opportunity to meet KLS. We had a great virtual coffee, led us to doing lots of things together and ultimately being here in the studio. So KLS, welcome to the Daily Edge. So, KLS, welcome to the Daily Edge.
In real life, I'm like the adopted sister you never had.
I love it. So, tell everybody a little bit about where you come from and kind of how we got started here.
Sure. So the LinkedIn journey, I think, is an interesting one. I grew my LinkedIn in a year to about 12,000 followers, and have now gone on retreats with randos. That's what I call you all. Rando strangers, and shared beds with random women that I met on LinkedIn. It's when I tell my corporate girlies, it is possible when I tell my corporate girlies that I'm about to meet 16 random strangers and share an Airbnb, they're like, what has happened to you? So yeah, I had a 30-year corporate career, and I decided to go out on my own and take all that knowledge and all the things that I saw people doing wrong, and thought I have so many interesting tools to help them to find their way and find their edge, and decided to go out on my own. Had I known it would be as hard as it is, I don't know. I don't know if I would.
Everybody thinks, oh yeah, you opened a business and boom, now you take weekends off and it's great.
It's the greatest life ever.
Yeah, super challenging. But I put myself out there, and I never quit, and that's sort of been my motto. And of course, getting to work with incredible people like you, who are one of the partners at my table. I've set a new table. And like I said, I think my corporate friends don't really understand me. We speak a different language today.
So I want to unpack. So you guys met. You did one of our previous shows, which was the Huddler in the Hot Seat, and I watched the episode. And I this is one of my secret skills or special sauce. I just said, "Wow, she's different." I reached out and no agenda. I said, "Let's just have a virtual coffee." And you can just tell. I think life is about chemistry.
Yeah.
You either match or you don't. That song Good Vibrations, they were really good vibrations. But I was intrigued how somebody at the level of corporate you are, there's a lot of people who leave corporations and the corporations are 12 people. You work for BMW,
Right.
I'm a BMW guy. So I was intrigued by, wow, what's it like to work at that level and then to leave?
So you spoke about your corporate career, right? And exiting your corporate career, 30-year. That wasn't just a career. Like, it was a very successful journey. So help the listeners and the people watching get some context around what you really accomplished in that time that helped you have all of these tools and everything else. Give people that understanding.
Okay, so I sold cars to pay for college. That's actually how I got in. I followed a boy. I moved from Canada to the US, left the boy in Arizona, ended up going into the corporate side of automotive, and I spent 20 years there. So you mentioned BMW. I worked for GM for 5 years, and then BMW. And I think my edge at that time was I said yes to every opportunity. So I had a really wide breadth.
Yeah.
I did everything you could possibly imagine under the sun, said yes every single time, and they would throw me into the deep end, and they ended up throwing me into HR, and I had no clue what HR even was. I never got any job by applying for them. That was all through my network, which, by the way, 80% of jobs are found through your network, in case you didn't know that stat. It's
Bingo.
huge. So I came into HR and I thought, ooh, this is kind of intriguing. And as I explored who I really was and what my purpose was, unlocking people's potential was what I believe I was put on this planet to do. So having then become the head of HR at BMW, then chief people officer and several other companies, the concept of helping people really understand how can they live a more fulfilled life, more fulfilling career, and put themselves out there, take risks, be their true whole self, bring that whole self to work, which I think a lot of people don't realize they can, was the best part about being an HR leader.
So you said when you started your journey, you were open to being coached, which I think is a wonderful skill set. In fact, you currently have 4 coaches.
Four.
So
Four.
unpack that for people who don't have a coach and
Right.
are
Yeah.
trying to do it solo.
So I left corporate and decided to go out on my own, which was a really scary decision because I bet on me, which I always bet on me, always in my corporate career, but I didn't have a paycheck backing me. And that was the biggest fear. It's how am I going to replace my C-suite salary? I had to remove that from my mindset, because when you start a company, you're actually investing money up front. And the old KL probably would have danced and taken little dip toe steps and like really not gone all in. I was like, I need to figure out if this is a viable business. I got to go all in. And I decided to hire 4 coaches, all for very different reasons. And even when I met you guys, I think one of the things that I was super intrigued about was that I didn't even know what you did. Like, I'm like, yes, cool guy. He asked me to be on Huddler in the Hot Seat. And I was like, a cool conversation. Then his dad reaches out. Great. But what I loved.
But you did it. So even under those circumstances, you did a show. You had no idea what you were stepping into.
I didn't need to know.
Yeah, it was great. I love that.
I didn't need to know, because it was another opportunity to
Tell your
learn,
story.
another opportunity to meet someone fantastic who could potentially teach me something. And I think I have an interesting story to share. And if that helps someone, great. So yeah, so I ended up hiring 4 coaches. And at the time, I was about a year into my business development. I was only about 4 or 5 months into actual launch. And it was too slow for me. As a overachiever, I wanted a bit more speed. And so I met you, knew that I needed to go all in and get some structure to my business, because the organic approach on LinkedIn was working. I was building a following. I was like really doing well viral wise in terms of my content, but I needed a structure and a process to follow. And then I needed somebody else to help me look in the mirror and realize that my baby's ugly sometimes. And I wasn't showing up as my best self, partly because I was afraid of what I was stepping into, and did I have the chops to do this? So I put myself out there, and I had another coach really help me navigate that. And my support system completely went away. I mean, obviously I have my husband and my daughter, but my parents didn't have a clue what I'm doing. My corporate friends had no clue. I didn't even know what to ask for help. So this new network of people that really wanted to jump in and help was amazing. So the 2 of you, I hired a hormone coach, because menopause is no joke and nobody helps you with it. Your own doctors don't know how to help you with it. And then I hired a trauma coach, because I had some trauma from 19 years ago that needed to be released and was still absorbed in my body. And even we all have trauma. There was other traumas that came out as a result of that. And looking back, I don't even recognize myself when I look in the mirror.
Wow.
Like it is
I
a
remember in
dramatic
our
shift.
early dialogue, before we even got started, you said, I shared this with my husband, and he said, you have to do this.
Mhm.
So I think it's so significant. Nobody does this alone, man. You need to have support. You need to have somebody that is helping you drive this decision, not necessarily people you pay, people in your corner. So I was so enamored with that. I loved hearing that. And then obviously, you've embraced it by being coachable, and you very much like Mark. When Mark came in the business, he had that mindset where he said, what do I need to do? And he didn't question it. He didn't beat it up. He didn't say, you know, same as you. You just said, okay, if this is what I need to do, sounds like a lot, but I'm going to do it. And then that's the bridge I think people don't get to. They still think they hang on to what was old.
Before we even get to that process, I know as an alpha personality, and like you had a very driven mindset to get to where you needed to get to, yet most times those kinds of people have a really hard time asking for help, not having the answers or being able to figure out the answer on your own. Like, well, I can learn it. I'll look it up. I'll do the research. I'll read it. I'll figure it out on my own. How did you get to a place where not only were you comfortable with one coach, but 4 coaches, and saying, I'm willing to ask for all this help? Because I know that's a hurdle for myself.
I actually think throughout my career, and I think a lot of people would probably say this, they're afraid to ask for help.
Right.
Because it's a sign of weakness.
Right.
We've been trained that way.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally that's the message, is like, you know, just do it. Just, you know.
I was never afraid to ask for help, and I'm a learner. So I am constantly evolving and constantly growing. It could be that the trauma that happened 19 years ago, I lost my husband in a car accident. And I think that moment of like such complete despair, probably, I always knew that I could figure it out. I never ever worried that I couldn't find my way. But that moment was like, now this is a life or death situation. And if that didn't break me, there really is nothing that could possibly get in my way. And that doesn't mean that there wasn't fear. It was complete and utter devastation, but I somehow picked myself back up. I didn't pull the covers over my head. And I said, I have to keep moving forward. I have a 3-year-old daughter who needs me. You have a 3-year-old, you have 3-year-old, like there's not an option here. So I think the fear of being discovered that maybe you don't know what you're doing. I didn't know anything about any job I ever said yes to. I didn't know how to spell HR. I literally did not know how to sell cars. I liked the money. I had to find a way to pay for college, and I liked meeting people and working with people. So I think if you can get past the fear of not, of like someone's going to find you out, so what? Like, ask the questions, be curious. You don't have to know all the answers. I think that's when ego gets in the way, and then insecurity gets in the way, and those two don't play nice together.
So fear and doubt are human emotions that you're not going to get rid of. To your point, you figure out a way to deal with those. I mean, Mark, you as a coach, a football coach, you had fear and doubt before every game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I for me, faith was a big part of that, right? I remember early in my career, like when you said, like you just said yes to every opportunity, and you just kept taking and taking and taking. Like I so vividly remember that, right? Like it didn't matter if it was driving to Jacksonville to drop off a family's, a coach's family at the airport and driving back to practice, or it was having coffee made a very specific way, or handing out copies of the script, like whatever. Can you do this was always the thing. And I was always like, yes, I can do that. Even if I didn't know, I was like, if you're willing to ask me if I can, that means you're giving me an opportunity. So, but that then breeds a lot of imposter syndrome inside of yourself, because you're constantly taking on yeses, and you constantly don't know what you're doing, and you're constantly figuring it out. And you feel like you have to avoid anybody actually knowing that you don't know what to do. So for me, faith was a big component of that for me. That fed. I used to pray before practice. I used to pray before games on Friday night that like, hey, I feel like I've done everything I could possibly do. Can you help me the rest of the way now? Because like, I don't really know. That was my thing. Right. And that's how I learned to deal with it, was to truly just give it up at that point and go, I've done what I can do. If there's anything else now, I'll just have to go from there.
Now, at both of your stages of the game, different than mine, I realized after a while, nobody else knew what they were doing either. Even people who had the job for a long time and had the title, I was like, they have no idea. All of a sudden, it became clear to me that sometimes, and I think this is a place for you to go, a unique perspective. You weren't tied to all of the the old crap. You could bring something new to it and go, hey, why don't we do this? And I go, you're brilliant. No, I'm just looking at it differently. I have no baggage. So I think you brought that to this, what you've noticed in your career, you brought to your new coaching.
I will say, though, that's an interesting comment, because curiosity was one, I think, is one of my key edges, and vulnerability. So I really wasn't afraid to be who I was, but I was also very curious. And my curiosity could also be a threat to people who were not as confident.
Right.
Because I wanted to unpack the issue. One of my superpowers is solving extremely complex problems. I can lift up the hood, and I am trying. No, there is always a car reference. Sorry, I'm a car nerd. I'm a gearhead. Can't change that. I want to see how it all works. And so I'm asking these questions. And for people who perhaps then built that car, there were a lot of times where they were threatened by my questions, because the car is no longer running the way that it was intended to, or it's old, there's an old process. And so I wanted to figure out what was the best way to get there, what was the fastest way to get there, what was the best solution for the client in the end. And that segues to the work I think that we've done and the preparation that you talked about. Every single time I wanted to be as prepared as I possibly could. And sometimes that was me learning on my own, reading, researching, asking questions, getting an expert to come in and support. There were many different ways that you learn that, but I was always uber prepared. I never walked into a meeting unless I was prepared.
Uber and giving plugs to all of these brands.
Yeah, I can't help it.
So help people understand what that preparation really looks like in terms of, let's just say, you know, you're walking into a meeting with somebody new, right? Somebody maybe that, let's take it to your current business, right? Like a prospective new client or a prospective new, you know, opportunity that you would work with. What does preparation look like for you now in that, so people can understand how you're actually preparing?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, even before we get to a meeting with a potential client, my process and preparation on LinkedIn, it's how I'm showing up every single day on LinkedIn. It is ensuring that my posts are aligned with who I am. It's ensuring that letting go of the outcome of who potentially will see it or won't see it, because that's not within my control. I focus on the controllables every day, always have. And so the process of that, then the process of how do I reach out to clients? How do clients reach me? What is the DM process? How does it become something super authentic for me, that it's not a pitch slap, which nobody wants? How do I ensure that the person on the other end knows I care, because I care very, very deeply? So all I can control is how I show up and how I treat others. So that's it. So my process is, how am I showing up? And then when I get to have a coffee with someone, which is part of my process, is leading people to those conversations, I'm curious. I want to know who you are. Why are you talking to me today? What's going on? How can I potentially serve someone? And at the end of that conversation, it flips to, would it be helpful if I shared a little bit about what I do? And it is seamless. And then after that conversation, we lead to the next conversation. And it is this continuous, you called it once, ping pong tennis match. It's a continuous process of sharing.
I serve you, you serve me back. Bing, boom.
And I serve a lot of people, by the way, free. I serve a lot of people, like, incredible content that
I have to ask this question though.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you sound as well trained as anybody that we've ever worked with. I think part of that is because, and I think this is true for all good coaching, the student or the trainee has to have like the right intangibles in order to match the system and the coaching and the process. It's like a perfect fit. You're so process driven. You are so maniacal about having a step by step and focusing on the controllables that what we teach in modern business development, it's like, Lego pieces fitting together. It's unbelievable. Did you have any bad habits, or did you have any mental roadblocks that you had to overcome to adopt the system?
That's a good
Because I
question.
know for us, like, and particularly we're talking about car sales, right? Most car sales systems are very transactional, right? Yes, I have to build rapport with you when you walk in the door, but ultimately it's about me furthering the sale while you're in the dealership. How do I push you to get papers and numbers in front of you? I'm not saying that's the way you sold, but just in terms of having a sales mindset, were there any obstacles or roadblocks for you that
Really
you had
good.
to overcome
Good stuff.
to
Yeah.
get the process in place?
So before I answer that question, I want to say the reason why this worked is because I worked my ass off.
Yeah, of course.
Like,
it only works if you work.
let's be clear.
Easy is not part of the
Right.
equation.
Simple, not easy.
Right.
Simple, not easy.
I worked incredibly hard because I wanted to see if this is a viable business.
Right.
And by the way, it is. But I worked my butt off. I took every single piece of advice and coaching and process and structure. I took it to the bank, and it worked.
She was the first one to send us a spreadsheet. Like,
Yeah,
here's
tracking
what I
all
did.
of
And
the
like,
tracking all the
I
behavior.
remember Shay and I like going, maniac.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Complete maniac.
Yeah.
It
But
was
that's what
fun.
it takes.
It
Yep.
was
That's
really.
what it
It was also really fun. But I think I was afraid. I was my own biggest obstacle.
Okay.
I think there were days where I was so in my head, and letting go of the outcome was probably the biggest obstacle that I had to say, okay, I've done everything I possibly can. I've got the process. I worked my ass off. And the more I practiced talking with people about what I do, that was a muscle that took me time to figure out how that flowed. So it sounded really authentic to me because it has to be. It's me. It's
I don't think
my
we've
process.
said to the audience what you do.
Correct. That was going to be the next segue of the
Okay,
conversation. To keep it going. Yeah. But so
Sure.
if now you'll unpack for people what it is that you do and how you took this expertise from your 30-year climb to help people.
So as a chief HR officer, you interview and make offers to a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people over my career. And I watched most people show up for the interview poorly and negotiate even worse, or not negotiate at all. And as I was going through my career, I also realized that I wasn't negotiating. And there were 2 times in my career where I doubled my package. And I was so pissed at myself that I had been leaving so much money on the table. And this, by the way, was before I read any stats about how embarrassingly low the numbers are. I think it's less than 30% of women are negotiating. It's around 40-ish% of people who are negotiating. It is a really low statistic. And I realized it more and more as I was in HR. Once I started to figure out how to spell it and how I wanted to show up in that space.
Right.
So watching people do it really badly and obviously seeing how bananas the market is, I thought I have something that I can share. And so for those people that did it really well, I took notes. And I was then able to, as I mentioned, double my package a couple of times, once in an existing role, which is a specialty that I have, and once moving to a new company. So job hoppers will make about 55% more over their career by hopping. That's a reality, but you can also do it in your existing role. And then a third specialty that I have is helping people exit with packages. I did a video a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, and it went viral about stop revenge quitting, which is a new trend. So give your company the finger.
Yeah, help us understand what revenge quitting is.
So revenge quitting is like, I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you like, screw you guys, I'm out. I'm not even going to give you notice. We're at will, right? You don't have to give notice. And so people think like, yeah, I showed them. But the reality is you can ask for a package if you're unhappy. And I help people do that.
Oh, wow.
So my most successful one so far, she got $2.3 million.
Wow.
And it's a calculation based on your tenure and your level depending on your tenure, it's 2 weeks to 4 weeks for every year served, but it's a specialty that most people don't know that they can do. So
I had never heard of somebody on the outside who could help you negotiate inside.
Yeah.
So, you talked about curiosity. As we got to know each other, I was like, this has to be a business. Like, if I've never heard of it, you're solving a problem, which is what entrepreneurs do. So it becomes an awareness thing. Like, if you don't know, shame on you. Here you go. Here's help in this specific, that you go broader than that, but it's so great.
So I have a question, because we actually had a situation show up in our circle of people. Somebody was getting ready to leave, right? They had gotten an offer from a competitor, right? And they were ready to take that offer from the competitor. Then the place that they were currently at matched that offer, and they decided not to leave. Is there any so there's advice?
We just had this conversation.
So unpack that for us, and if you could coach that person now, what would you tell them?
So I think counteroffers are the worst thing you can ever do.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable. That is incredible. That's what he and I both said this morning.
Never take the counter.
We said never take the counter.
So first of all, let's back it up.
Yeah.
Never offer a counter. As a leader, if somebody has decided to leave, in their heart, they will never be the same with you. So you are never going to stay and be truly committed. They have a foot out the door. I think there's
such intelligence.
There's probably stats that we could research to show how many people who did then accept a counter offer actually ended up leaving, and in what period of time.
Wow.
You've made the decision to leave. So what I would, if you were interviewing, so let's be bold. And if you're thinking about taking calls from other companies and you're in the interview process, why not sit down with your boss and say, hey, listen, something's just not quite feeling right. I got a call from a recruiter. I took the call. I realized I don't want to leave, but there's some intriguing stuff happening out there. And what I really want to do is talk about my career, where I'm going. The packages that they're waving around are more significant than where I'm at. Let's talk about that. So that's one option.
Yeah.
If you accept another job and then you decide to stay, it'll never be the same for you nor your company. But if you decide to take that offer with the new job, you should also negotiate an exit package. And I mean, that's a double win. Many of my clients.
As an owner, I hate you. Right?
As an owner, I mean, we're all playing the system.
So help me out, because I would tell you that, like, if somebody came to me, right, the emotional gut reaction particularly if you're a small business, but even if you're medium, whatever, there's a emotional gut reaction to being blindsided by the fact that you're leaving. Now, I would also say in that same sentence, like, if you're being blindsided, somebody's leaving, you're not doing your job as a leader. So but let's just bypass that. And let's just say it's one of those scenarios that, like, hey, the leader is blindsided by this person choosing to accept an offer from somewhere else. My immediate gut is like, fine, bye, right? Like, you hurt me, right? Good for you. You found something else. I'm not going to try to save you. Then in the same breath, you tell me that you're trying to negotiate an exit package with me?
Let me back up. So if you're negotiating an exit package, you're not telling them that you... So
got it.
Let's play a scenario.
There's a gentleman type of thing there. Where, look, I'm not feeling it. I'm going to leave. I'd like to create an exit package. And then you go search for that.
Got it.
I like that.
That makes sense to me. That makes sense.
You're not doing anything dishonest or distrustful. Because what happens is most people spend the last 3 months looking for a job and not doing their job. I'd rather, hey, I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
I'd like to do it classy and right.
There's always a reason too, right? Like, maybe I didn't get the promotion. You've been promising me the promotion. We know that you put someone else in that job, which is okay. But I think it's my time. I think it's time for me to move on and have a beautiful conversation.
So relevant to have somebody who has knowledge in that space. And I think, and you and I have talked about this, and for the audience, I think as an owner of a company, as a leader, you should get trained on negotiation as well. you should really, and I think that could be another track for you, is talking to the leaders about getting ahead of this, understanding what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm plugging a business that doesn't exist, but
No.
I just think, like, I don't know. I
Right.
never knew. I always took it personally.
Right.
What do you mean
Yeah.
you're leaving? You know, like,
Negotiation.
Right, It's like, you don't want to be around me. If you're leaving, I want you gone as fast
You're
out
dead
of
to
my
me.
life. You
Yeah.
are dead to me.
You have to leave South Florida now.
Right.
You can't even be in
Don't
the
even
market.
call me ever again.
I think business leaders make the mistake of not building trust and transparency inside the organization and not having career discussions with their people and just discussions about what lights their fire and how they want to grow. So if you do that, you will have greater loyalty, I think.
Wow.
But also talk to me about my financial future here, because I have financial goals in addition to my career goals. And that's your job as a leader to open that door. It's your job as an individual to also open that door. You don't wait for your boss to do that. But I think if business owners created more transparency around profit, revenue, our P&L, what does it look like for you to be part of this organization? How are you helping us grow? And then what's your piece in it? What's the stake that you get as a result? So it has to be a mutual benefit.
Though. I think most employees are scared shitless to have that conversation. You know,
that's why they hire me.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I just don't think you're ever trained to do
If
that.
you could only solve one side of the equation, if you could only solve either the ownership side with better leadership and better transparency and better cultivation of culture, or solve,
and finally we get to the edge,
or solve the individual side in terms of being able to advocate for yourself, understanding your worth, understanding how to negotiate. If you could only solve one or the other, which one would it be?
Well, the world would be a much better place if leaders showed up as great leaders. So that would be philosophically, that would just be
that'd be
euphoria.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we are all responsible for ourselves. So if I could help every individual and have a wider, like a massive, massive net to help people to actually believe in themselves, advocate for their worth, that spreads to every aspect of their life, not just the negotiation of their next paycheck. That is like, I am showing up and I'm stepping into fear, no fear. I'm stepping into all of it and I'm ready for it and I'm ready to be coached and I'm ready to take risks. And that would also be unbelievable because that then is every individual's responsibility.
Last question of like tactical advice for somebody or perspective for somebody. They want to advocate for themselves, right? They're unhappy or they're thinking maybe this isn't the right place. And they go have a conversation with their leadership about like, hey, I want to talk to you about where I'm at. I want to talk to you about like what I see in the marketplace in terms of what people are maybe making in packages and what they have. And like, I want to talk about my future here. And they're met with adversity. They're met with either emotions or they're met with stay in your place.
They're not your people.
It's confrontational.
They're not your people.
So the answer is get out.
They're not your people.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're not. We're not speaking the same language. It's so simple.
Yep.
So simple.
Not easy.
Simple, not easy.
Simple, not easy, but they're not your people.
Wonderful, wonderful. Plenty of edges to be found in this show. So KLS, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome.
Really.
If people
all the way from Connecticut,
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
If people want to know where to find you, where do they find you?
LinkedIn. It's
okay.
my jam.
Awesome.
Keri-Lynne Shaw. Yep. That's the best place. We'll
have information in the show notes. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for finding the edge with us. Remember to like, comment, and share, and we'll see you next time.